Hello, and a very warm welcome to you. My name is Mark Morley, and this was the IT Business Partner Playbook, the unique series where I'm joined every week by business partners and business relationship managers from around the globe. In this series, we go beyond the theory to uncover what business partnering looks like when the pressure is on and the stakes are high. Each conversation is an open window into the challenges, the breakthroughs, and the subtle shifts that turn good partnerships into great ones. It's about the work, the wins, and the wisdom that only comes from being in the thick of it. Before we jump into today's conversation, please indulge my usual two requests. The first, if you've got any thoughts or feedback about the podcast, I'd love to hear them. Your input helps shape the conversation, so if there's a subject you'd like us to explore, please let me know. Secondly, if you're finding value in these episodes, please hit the follow or subscribe button and give this episode a thumbs up. Only 50% of those that watch this series do subscribe, which is not unusual, but it would really help the channel if you could click that button. So on to today's episode. I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Verona, a business integration and relationship manager for the College of American Pathologists based in the US. Dan has been in this current role for almost 7 years and spent over a decade in various technical roles. Dan likes to share his BRM experiences online, which is what I read on LinkedIn. So he really likes to help others that have got similar challenges. So I thought it'd be great for the podcast. So good morning to you, Dan. Thanks so much for joining me. Can I hand over to you for a quick introduction before we discuss your journey here and what BRM looks like for you?
Sure. So again, Dan Verona, as you mentioned, I've met my organization. So I'm probably a little different than some of the other people that you've interviewed. I've been fortunate enough to be at my company for a good portion of my career, almost 21 years. And so that's very rare, I think, these days.
Yeah.
See that. So I've had an evolution of, where I started at my organization to kind of where I'm at now. I came in probably, 5 years out of college. At that time was around 2001, and I did some consulting. Actually, my very first gig was working in a magazine printing company.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd kind of be, I got to see it was thrown right into it with, plugging up computers to actual binders and printers and floor scales and understanding, what that actual manufacturing, like you study in college is like, oh, now I'm actually seeing it, which is really cool. But
did they have the printers in the building that you're in?
Yeah. There were there were huge printers, like 2 stories. You actually had to walk into them, and we printed some amazing magazines and other publications at that time. So that was actually one of my first gigs, and so it was very not your traditional consultant type role. It was like, here's a laptop, figure out how to code this thing, and let's just go to town and start actually going out and interviewing people and talking to people about what they do in their day to day. And so, they're just thrown into it. So it was really interesting. Then I kind of transitioned into the organization that I'm with now, which was very different, structured very different. It was a lot bigger. It was a lot more organized. It was a lot more standards. And I came in as a developer, and then kind of built my way up into leadership and was running a team for the BI and analytics team. And then, as you mentioned, over the last 5 or 6 years, I kind of came into this BRM role, or we call it a BIRM, BIRM, which is Business Integration Relationship Management. We always like to put a spin on things at our company, but I actually like the integration definition that they threw into it. Just that I think it brings a little bit more, it sheds a little more light into the specific role that the BRM does, at least at our organization. Because if you Google business relationship manager, you could be working at a bank, trying to pull on business, and so I think it puts a little bit more definition around it. But I'm not about to start to set that trend of kind of renaming the industry of the business relationship manager. So we do use it. So we're known as the BIRMs. There's only 2 of us in the organization. So it's cool. I like the title.
And where was the role new when you moved into it? Or was it someone already doing it when you joined them?
The role had existed probably 7 or 8 years, so it was fairly new.
Okay.
A couple of our senior leadership team within IT had brought it in, and so I was probably the 4th or 5th BIRM from the organization.
And has the role changed much since you've moved into it? I mean, was it a fairly well-established role when you joined? You said there's one or two of you?
There's only two of us in the organization, right? So there's about 600 people in our organization, so we're fairly smaller, where we don't need a large team. But there's only two of us right now. But the role has evolved. It was very much out of the box, right? What you see in the BRN Institute materials is very, here's what we're sticking to. But over time you learn like what other capabilities or what do the people have, right, that it actually bring to the table that we can expand the role. We try not to get into too much of the tactics of the day-to-day or the operations side of IT. Something, that's always a thing you got to be careful of. But it has expanded a little bit, just again with the skill set. Sometimes because of our visibility into the organization, we're asked to lead things that not a lot of other people maybe have the background to do or the visibility to do. So it is very unique, and I actually enjoy it quite a bit.
Did you find when you first moved into the role, because you do have quite a technical background, did you find that you tried to kind of got more involved in technical things because you were kind of familiar and comfortable with them, or were you happy just to leave that behind and focus on the business?
I as my LinkedIn resume says, I was always developer. That was always something that was at heart. When I first came to the organization, I worked on, because we are a healthcare membership association, we had learning management systems, we had association management systems. So I was always working on enhancing or extending those. But I believe that the background really did help me, the technology. Even in my previous role before I became a BIRM, I was really in this BI and analytics world, and it's a very if you come from that world, a lot of that world is asking questions, digging deep into what is the business looking for, and trying to get them to answer some of those tough questions, because that's just the nature of BI and analytics. And I've always had this kind of, hey, we're an IT, we're a service, we're a service to the organization. We should show our skills and our talents off. Let's try to take out from, we always talk in the DRM world, moving away from that order taker into that strategic partner. And this was my opportunity when I was leading that team to really go off and showcase, like, hey, here's the skill sets that we have within IT. Here are the tools and the technologies. Let's expose some of these things. Let's not just wait and to get a ticket or a project request. Let's actually showcase some of these things, their capabilities, and then the people as well, right, within IT. I think if anyone in IT knows, sometimes people they want to hunker down and they just tell me what to do, and I'll do amazing job coding. It's a beautiful program for you, but it's hard but there is skill set there, and there are people that are willing to have those relationships. So I was always one of those people. I love to be out in front of the business, talking to them, building those relationships, gaining their insights. Because again, I've always seen IT, we are a service, right? What is it we can do to help enable that technology to better meet business needs?
It sounds that it was rather fortuitous, your role at the magazine, because that really put you in front of people. So I think that really set a foundation for you. You were destined to be more involved with people versus some other people in IT that you mentioned are kind of happy just to put their head down, get on and code, and not really see what's going on around them.
Yeah. That was interesting. I mean, it was, again, a couple years out of college, go back and talk to the people in the bindery and figure out what their pain points are and figure out how to automate this thing. It's like, okay, let's go and figure out how to do that. And there's absolutely growing pains, and you miss some things and stumble along the way. And then you come back, and those are learning opportunities, right? So yeah, getting out in front of the business, that's just something I've done since very early in my career. So this was a very easy transition for me.
I think that's really great, and it's a really nice example, because I think a lot of people in IT don't get that, especially with the size of organizations. And when you have IT departments of 2,000 or 3,000 people, getting the chance to go out and walk the floor and see actually what why are we doing this? We're building this thing that's huge, but why? What's the end result? And often you're one of so many people, and you're just building something that's part of something bigger. Being able to see the helicopter view is quite tough. But as a business partner or business relationship manager, that's the kind of you can step back and see that bigger picture, and you can take that to the IT team to at least give them that overview. And I think that's something. I think you'll always get people that are happy just to get on with what they're doing. They're happy coding, they're happy with the technical stuff, but I think the real value is where you know why you're doing something, because then that gives you the thought behind, if I do something a bit different, actually it could be more valuable. There's no point doing what people are asking me to do. I should do what they need me to do.
And I'm fortunate where, I do believe in the mission of our organization. So that really helps me do my best to work with my business partners every day. And you are right. Some people within IT, leave them at their desk. It's like, no, you're probably not the best person to bring out in front of business. But they do have there's some value there to, expose, because I don't, my knowledge of technology is, some areas is fairly deep, but most of it is fairly wide. Cybersecurity and networking and infrastructure and cloud, AI, right? I dabble, I understand the concepts. I'm in enough conversations where I can talk about it and understand it, but to actually do it is another thing. But there's real value to bringing some of those people in on occasion, just to ensure that, hey, I'm not, and I've shown this in some of my articles on LinkedIn, I'm not always the solution person. I don't always have the decision, but it is my job to know where to go to identify and bring in those people that can contribute and answer those questions and actually say, no, this is the right solution. This is the direction that we should be going, versus something that, a BIRM who doesn't have that deep technical expertise is directing people.
And it's nice when, Jeremy mentioned this way back in the first episode, that you can bring these people along because they do have their technical capability. They're the ones that ultimately are going to build this thing. And it's nice if you can kind of showcase what they're doing. So you can bring them into the meetings and this is the guy that's going to make this happen. So you're giving credit to the people that would otherwise be kind of, not really recognized properly. So have you found, sorry.
No, absolutely. Those people, everyone's working very hard to a common cause, and it's important to recognize people. Recognition is, I actually had when I'm not working out of the house, there's actually a piece of paper, just a little note that says recognize, and so that's actually something that within our organization that we really strive for, is even if it's something small, sending an email, just saying thank you to somebody, or saying, hey, that really was a good conversation. I was stuck and you brought in your technical expertise and you really helped the conversation just to keep it going, because maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. And right, we guess sometimes that the BRMs or the BIRMs, we have a pretty good idea of it, but all of a sudden it's like, oh no, we're in over our head. We need our experts, we need our architects, we need our developers to really make sure that we're speaking the truth and we're just bringing the right information to our business partners.
Yeah. Have you found that your business partners have really warmed to you? Do they feel enlightened? Do they feel you're really kind of helping them understand the technical world, and that that you're proving your value?
It depends who you talk to, right?
Okay.
I hope that I'm doing the best that I can and bringing the right information and taking in the right information, right? It's all about information exchange. You are absolutely going to run into business partners that are resistant, that they can do it on their own, or they don't necessarily see the value of understanding why, I need to understand what's happening in the IT world, or why did we sequence projects out in such a way that it's going to take us 2 years to get to where we need to get, right? But there's absolutely others on the other side of it, like, yes, please bring me involved, bring me along with the journey. I want to understand what is happening so that way I can coordinate and plan as needed. So it's every business partner is different, and I'm sure you've probably heard that along the journey as you've been talking to people. Some people, they don't want my time. They don't want me on the calendar. If they see Dan Verona, Berm, one-on-one engagement, touch point, like, oh, what is this guy doing? Right? Like I'm good. Like, we're good. I have everything I need. I'm good in my world. But there's some people that are very welcoming and like, yes, bring me the information. I absolutely need to know, because what I've noticed is those that are inviting, they actually get a lot of the wins, like, because that's where I can understand, what are you up against? What are you facing? Are you changing with your business strategy? How is that influencing, or how do we need to enable technology to meet those needs?
Yes.
Sometimes it's not even technology, right? It's just, hey, this is a really good to know. Or, we have a lot of events at our organization, large events. And as we in IT, we need to upgrade and enhance systems. And sometimes we have release weekends and we need to bring things down. It's like, all right, IT, this weekend in August, we got a big event going on. Don't touch any of the systems. Don't bring them down. Don't unplug anything. Don't upgrade anything. Let's, so that's important for me to know what is happening in the business, so I can bring that back to IT. That's information. That's crucial. That two-way communication. So that's always been vital, to understand what's happening in the business. Absolutely. And if I can get in early, we call it early and often. Within our organization, let the berms get in early. Let's just not make it a one-time occasion. Let's get it in weekly, monthly, every other week. It depends on who it is that I need to engage with. Those folks, those VP levels, at the higher level, maybe I don't need to meet with them every month. But it's the people that are kind of doing and really the planning, the tactical people that really have the insights to say, oh, Dan, we're making a big shift. Like, we just came out of a big meeting and here's what's happening. We're changing our business scope, or we're adding a new product line or service line. We need some help. We need to figure out, go do your berm thing, right? Bring in your resources, get your estimates, bring in vendors. Right. That's what we bring in, to really make sure that they understand, when they're introducing something new or changing something, that we have that information available.
When you have these meetings, is this something that are they like fact finders? So you're going to spend that time really just listening, or do you do research ahead of these meetings to think, okay, we know this is coming down the pipeline, or we've seen this elsewhere, so now I've got some time with this business partner, I want to share all this information I've heard I think might help. Is it, how do they work, those meetings?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Right. So I've gotten used to kind of expecting the unexpected, priority changes. I think that's natural. Again, I've been at my company for 21 years, so somebody else may say, no, priorities are set, but I don't believe that that's true. I think priorities change fairly often. So I'll go into, there's occasions I'll go into a meeting, I'm ready to go, and I'm there to explain, what the IT roadmap is looking like for the next 2 years. And I get into, like, unfortunately, we need to change direction, and instead of giving you an hour, we're giving you 15 minutes, and instead of you giving us information, we have information for you, and here's what it is. And so you have to be flexible. Most of the time, I know the business partners very well, and I can kind of react to that. And I think that's the power of having that relationship, is that one, they feel comfortable enough to know that they can pivot and change the priority on you, where they know I'm not going to freak out or like lose it. Right. That's the value in having that relationship. So it is both. So I'm used to it. I'm absolutely used to it.
You said that relationships work well with some partners and not so well with others, and we've had that from every one of our guests that said the same thing. If there's, could you put your finger on anything that might be the cause of that? I mean, is it just pressure of work that means these people just they think they don't have time to talk to you or involve you, that they just kind of want to keep their head down and get on with it. Could you put your finger on anything that might suggest why relationships work some places and not others?
I think in our role, you have to go in with an open mind and be very curious. You have to go in. It'll take some time to understand who you're working with. But I think that those that are a little bit more resistant, I think they're just protective of their work. They don't want things shuffled around. They don't want you coming in and be like, we're going to take out this system and put something new in. I feel sometimes I'm in sales. I really do feel like I'm in sales. Like, here, what is the value of IT? What are we doing? And it's a service, and it's hard. Sales is tough. Sales is really, really tough. I've never been in that role, but I have a lot of colleagues and friends, and it is tough. But there is value, and if you can kind of even talk about some of your past successes, and show that to those that are a little bit more resistant, you do get some leeway there, right? You do get invited to some of those meetings on occasion. It's tough. It takes a while. I mean, it's as you talked, I've been at my company a while. Those relationships, man, some of those barriers are tough to break. It's not always about bringing the sledgehammer, right? But sometimes you got to have thick skin on occasion, and you got to be able to answer the questions of why did IT do these things this way. So it is good to have some prepared materials or just background before you get into these things. But it is tough. There's good reason, and sometimes as a BRM, being kind of that face of IT, we have to admit that on occasion we've screwed up, that we made mistakes, and I think that is okay to say, and I've told that to my leadership. Like, we're not always going to get it right. We're not always going to go in with the best solution, and sometimes that's on the business as well, right? They come in and say, "This is the tool I need. This is the way I want it done." And we don't have a lot of options. And like, well, if this is the way we need to get done, let's figure it out. And those are learning opportunities for both sides. But I think, going back to your question, is bringing those opportunities to those that are a little bit more resistant to letting us in, to those meetings, to those, at the table. Yeah, that is really important.
You mentioned sales there, and it's quite interesting because as a BRM or as a BRM, when I've spoken to other people about, how difficult was it moving into a BRM role when you come from a technical background or you come from a business background, what kind of skills do you learn and what was interesting is finance was brought up, that it's kind of surprised people that they've had to really understand finance. Where does business make money? Where are the costs for everything? So that's something that surprised people. But I think sales is another thing that surprises people, because you are required kind of to sell the benefits of yourself and of the organizations that you're representing. And sales is tough. Some people say you're either sales or you're not.
Right.
I think all of these things can to some extent be learned. But it's interesting that as a BRM or a BRM, there are kind of some skills that you are taught, and that we spoke about the BRM Institute, their certifications, that gives you a nice foundation. But I think there are a lot of other skills that as a BRM, it would help you to be taught. And I think sales is one of them. So I just wondered what you felt about that, these other kind of periphery skills that are actually quite critical to the role.
Sales is a big thing. I believe that having the skill set of emotional intelligence, kind of being able to read the room, whether you're physically in the room or you're seeing things pop up on a chat or through an email, really getting a tone of what conversations are about really goes a long way. The best thing to do as a BRM is you don't want to be surprised or blindsided and walking into a room and somebody's really upset. Or something didn't go well, or you're about to get, drilled because you just put a business case together, an estimate, and it's a $2 million estimate. Where did this come from, right? You don't want to be surprised. No one wants to be surprised like that, but I really think having that emotional intelligence, and that goes along with the sales, right? Is walking into a situation, being able to read the room. Are they buying what I'm selling? And am I selling the wrong thing? Really understanding what it is, and that takes time. That takes time. You're not gonna develop that relationship with one meeting, one touch point. We've had, at our organization, we've had a lot of leadership change in the last 2 to 3 years, and that's fine. That's going to introduce new change and different personalities, but you can't shy away from that. You don't want to be scared of that. You really have to. This is the role. This is the role to make sure that we understand what are those different personalities. Who are they going to please? Who are they going to kind of push away? What are they thinking is short term, long term? It's really important for the BRM or the BRM to get in front of those conversations. Make sure, and I try to do this, right? You want to document your wins as a BRM. Yeah. Write those things down so when you go into those conversations, we have, I always call it our BRM propaganda. Right. We have our standard, 5 or 6 slide deck that kind of gives an overview of what the role does. And, and I, sometimes I want to throw that thing out because it's too cookie cutter. It's kind of like, and it's bland. And, half the time it talks about the role. But it's like, we'll kind of just even get off the topic of the deck anyways, because we really get into really what those big wins are that we've had. Yeah. And they're not always big wins. Sometimes they're small wins. But that is a big piece of it, right? That's the value of the role. And I feel that it's crucial to really get out again, early and often, to tell about those successes. That's critical to the role.
Is there anywhere in your organization where people can find this information? Do you have, a BRM page somewhere where people can go to see, okay, what are the BRMs doing for us? And you've got a list of what you're involved in, what you've achieved, what you've helped achieve, that kind of thing.
We've got, again, we probably have more of that propaganda type material that we try to sell to everyone that we direct, but I prefer to have the one-on-ones, right? We do have our typical IT intranet page that kind of breaks down departments and the standard language that, most organizations probably have. But I feel that it's my job not to even push people to that page. It's really to forget the paperwork. Let's just get into it. I want to understand, what it is. But again, let's talk about those wins, those successes that we've had. Let's talk about some of the failures that we've had as well. Everything's on tail. I'm usually an open book. I go in and I don't even talk about business the first 5 or 10 minutes. I try, I've got kids. I've got a family life. It's crazy life here. I understand that people have life outside of work, and I want to understand, like, what does your day-to-day look like, right? What happens before work? What happens after work? It also helps me kind of get the tone of what the conversation's going to go like. Yeah. Someone may not be as open. Again, my day's good. It's going great. I started at 8 and I'm on it. Some people are like, oh, my kids were being a pain this morning. They don't want to take their lunch, or they didn't want to wear an outfit that we put out for them. And they were just kicking and screaming, getting in the car. And that's I love to hear that stuff, because then you can relate to that a little bit, right? And so I think it's a nice icebreaker when you get into these conversations. And then it just really, even after that, it just sets the tone. Like, oh, I know I can talk to these people about, like, what's going on in my life, or like, something crazy that happened at work, because you understand their personality. And I love to bring in my personality. I love to bring humor and just an easy conversation, because then you can start to really get down into the nitty gritty. Because I've often found that, like, maybe I've got an hour with someone, 40 minutes is we're just talking about life. Yeah. And that's when you really can make some headway with getting into making those deep connections. And then, like, it's like, okay, the business stuff's like, okay, yeah, great. We can handle that. That's what we do all day long. Yeah. And for the most part, what I've done is whatever they're trying to exchange information with, I have to run off and do something with it anyways. I'm not going to be able to solve their problem right then and there on the phone. I'm going back and I'm doing a lot of research. I'm pulling in, my experts, whether it's architecture, cybersecurity, our desktop services, whatever it is. I'm doing that offline anyways. And so that just makes it so much easier for them to give me that information to go off and do what I do best.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it's been a while since I've worked for a corporate, but I remember it used to frustrate me that we would have these meetings. There was always meetings after meetings, and I would want to go in, have the meeting, say what needs to be said, cut to the chase. Time is a resource that none of us have, so let's just get in and get it done. But it's amazing what you miss when you just talk business.
Right.
And it's amazing that, you could be, someone's not delivering something you need them to deliver, and you go into the meeting and you're like, why haven't you done this? And whereas if you just sit back and like, how's your day going? Well, actually, yeah, my dog's sick, or, my family member's sick, or or we couldn't do this for some reason. And you get to find out, actually, this person's got a lot of stuff going on in their life, either at work or at home. And there's a reason why they're not doing this. And it's not because, they're a problem person. It's not because they don't like you. It's because, there's stuff going on. And so if you spend a little time finding out a bit more about the person, then you'll understand a bit more about why things aren't happening as you might expect, or, you can give someone a bit more leeway. So I think it's absolutely, definitely spend the time to get to know people. Doesn't have to be in meetings. You can just stop by people when you meet them in the hallway or in the street. But it's definitely worth getting to know people, because it tells you, it builds a relationship, doesn't it? That's what this is all about. It helps you understand where people are at, and so when you ask something of someone, what the pressures are, what they're competing with. It's not just that piece of work. There's other stuff going on in their life that might impact it. So I think that's great advice.
It helps build the trust, right? That's part of the relationship building. If you have insights into their life, and for example, if you're, there's a business case, the BRM or the BRM role, a lot of what we do is business case development, right? Gathering those estimates, putting together the value plans, ensuring that, your business partners really thought clearly about what that investment looks like, and that the value is there, and that, the story is kind of coherent. And we got feedback from other people, right? And there's always a timeline on a lot of those things, right? We got to get it in by a certain time, otherwise we're going to miss the budget planning cycle. But building that trust, and understanding what's going on in their life, maybe they're going to be out for a week because there's something going on in their personal life. Okay, good, great, give it to me. I'll take it. I know what needs to get done. I've been through it enough where I know who those critical partners, those stakeholders are that need to weigh into what this business case is going to look like, right? So just even having that little insight is absolutely crucial. It is very helpful.
One thing that I'm keen to talk to you about is you've been at the company a long time, and the last company I was there for over 6 years. One of the things that I enjoyed is that after that length of time, and you've obviously been there longer, but you really get to know everyone and everything about the company, to a certain extent, obviously. And one of the things that is really interesting is that the longer you're at a company, you really get to know where the centers or where the influence is. So even people that are not in positions of power, it's surprising how much influence certain people can have. And is that something you've experienced where you are, that you've knowing being part of the furniture for so long, that you've got to know, I might need to get to this person, but if I go through that person, then I'll get a direct line. Is that something you've noticed?
Oh, absolutely. I guess that is the beauty of being at an organization for as long as I have. But I think that's crucial of any BRM or BRM role, right? Is understanding who are those key people that can really get it done. I absolutely know who those are. I mean, those people have changed, over the last 15, 20 years, whatever it is. But that is key. Even within IT, I think that's critical. we know that there's people that are going to make the decision, but the people that actually get the work done, those are the people you want to go to. You know, the BRM role, we're not really supposed to be in the day-to-day, and for the most part, we're not, at least in my organization, we're not in the day-to-day operations. But hey, look, when there's an emergency production issue and we're not getting the response that we need from a certain team, I know exactly who to go to hey, what's going on with this thing? Again, I don't have a lot of authority, but maybe this person I need to reach out to isn't even aware that there's an issue, or that somebody's not responding to that. But in the business, I know that if I'm not getting a response from someone, you know, you got to go through your checks and balances, right? You got to start where this is where I've been told to start. Let's start there. But if I'm not getting a response, I know exactly who to go to get things done. That's part of the nature, and that takes a while to learn. That really does take a while to learn, and again, that's part of the relationship building. That's part of the just having these conversations, understanding what everyone's role is, and making sure you kind of keep track of it. And we do a pretty good job of identifying who are those key stakeholders in the business, and we try to map them up to kind of business capabilities, and really sharing. There's only 2 burns in our organization, and we're pretty much in sync with, all right, who's the person that we need to go to in this part of the business that we know is going to get it done, or is going to provide the most insight. Like, yeah, this person's good and they know it, but like, if you really want to get the answers, no, you go to this person, because I don't like to waste people's time just for the sake of, I'm always about having a conversation. I'm always about that. But sometimes if something's on the line and we got to get something done, get it out the door, you need to know who exactly to go to answer those questions or to make that decision, right? That's crucial.
Do you spend much time trying to connect other people rather than kind of owning or managing all the relationships yourself? Do you spend much time connecting other people so that you can kind of step back out of the loop?
Absolutely, and that's a huge, you know, that's part of the lingo of a BRM, is the connector and the navigator and the organizer or the orchestrator. Absolutely, you know, someone comes to us all the time with a new project or new idea, and I would say, you know, we have a lot of unique services and products at our organization, so not everything is always the same, but there's absolutely some standard processes or things that we're dealing with third parties that we can normalize on. And like, oh, you know what? Like, this isn't the first time I've heard this. Somebody in this part of the business has a very similar need or similar pain point. Let's bring everyone together to see if there's, you know, more of a better solution, versus like, you know, example is that I came up with. You know, we do a lot of conflict of interest collection at our organization because we work with a lot of third parties. We work with a lot of members, and over the years we've learned that there's like 6 or 7 different ways to collect that information, and it's a kind of an inconsistent experience. And so we started up earlier this year. How can we consolidate and have a better consistent experience for our members, for our third parties? And I started introducing everyone to each other, and they have very similar needs and they're pretty much all doing the same exact thing. Well, let's consolidate. Let's not even from I always look at things, it's not necessarily always about the money and the cost savings. Sometimes it's just about an easier process. It's an improved customer experience. It might be just better from an organization or contract, right? Instead of having 5 different tools that do the same thing, you have 5 different contracts with the vendor that you have to maintain, right? Why can't you just consolidate those things? So I am always looking to see, can we make our business partners' life a little bit easier? Can we make our members' life a little bit easier? But can we also make even our shared services areas, like the people that are doing the contracting, right? Those they're some of my good friends, but I see what they have to go through on a daily basis, right? You talk to anyone in the contracts, like it's a tough process. It is a tough role. No one's ever happy.
Yeah.
It's brutal. But these are very smart, intelligent people. So can we make their lives easier by consolidating contracts? You know, even the people that have to have these conversations with the vendors that are even within IT, right? They're managing 5 or 6 different contracts as well, doing the renewals and checking back in with people. Do we still need 100 licenses of this thing?
Yeah.
Making their lives easier. So I'm always trying to tie these people in together. Some comes up to me, maybe it's not something small as a tangible tool. Maybe it's, we really had a big project, a new idea that we wanted to bring in. Let's think about who that's going to all impact. Is that impacting your marketing team, right? Or is this something new? Or are we changing the existing practice service that we need to really get the word out, communicate about it differently? Do we need to do research on this thing? So we do bring in those marketing people. There are some of our products or services that kind of overlap. And so we absolutely have to bring in those third parties from across the organization to kind of weigh in. Is there something behind the scenes that's more operational that's going to impact how we bring in data, how we review member or customer data, right? That's always a big thing. We're a very data-driven organization. Is this changing the fundamentals? Are we creating new data points? Okay, well, who's going to weigh in and making sure that that data is governed correctly, that data is being stored correctly, and if that is where it's being stored, does that need to kind of go into other systems, right? So there's people who have amazing ideas out there. And then I'd start bringing in other people. And it's like, well, wait, we're making this more complex. I go, well, not necessarily, right? There's people that can help with these decisions to make sure that we are on the right path, to making sure that we're implementing this thing correctly, that we're sharing this information correctly, that we're not just throwing something out there and hoping that it's going to maybe generate revenue or bring in new members or bring new customers, right? That's the value of connecting all these different people. And understanding what their skill set and their roles are. So it takes some time. It takes some time, but I think that is critical. Again, going back to that VRN Institute material, being that connector and that organizer throughout these conversations.
Yeah. We've actually, we were doing training and workshops with a company. This is going back a while, but it got to, we could see that their vendor relationships, there are SLAs for all of their vendor partners, but they were all written as though we've got this big stick and we're just holding it here, just waiting to whack you with it as soon as you fail to meet some of these SLAs. And you could tell that it was just a transactional thing. You need this, we'll give you that. Whereas we work with other companies where it's really been a partnership. This is what we need. How can you help us do it? It's not been this big stick waiting to beat them, because it is a partnership. The vendor understands what the business is trying to achieve, or the organization, and so they do what they can to try and help them achieve that. Do you think being a BIRM, getting involved in these vendor relationships, you can help create that kind of relationship? So you don't have just waiting to punish people for not performing, but you are really bringing the vendors along as though they are part of your business.
There's something like, what did I get myself into, right? Why did I insert myself into this conversation? This is not going well. Everyone has those challenging vendor conversations where I just, God, what did we do? This is a horrible mistake. Get me off this ride. This is not going to end well. But having the exposure and making sure, like, even our contractors, those are our business partners. Those are people that we work day in and day out with, and even understanding what their pain points are is critical to having those conversations. Then you learn, right? Okay, what didn't work out? Just kind of being a fly on the wall in those conversations sometimes is extremely helpful. So I bring in that knowledge when I go into these conversations. And all right, what kind of vendor are we looking at? Have we had previous contact with them? Are they existing vendor? Are they a new vendor? That information really does help. Making sure that we have kind of our ducks in a row. Like, what are we asking? Really, it's really more on the business side, getting them aligned on. Let's make sure we're really clear on the ask.
Yeah.
What is the problem that we're trying to fix? What is it we think this vendor is going to bring in and be able to solve for us? Answering those questions before you even get into the call with the vendor just makes it so much easier. Even having our trusted partners on the contract side, even having them along for the ride, even though I know it's another person in the call. Where someone's like, oh, why do we gotta have more people on the call? Oh, that's just, we don't want to go in unarmed, because I'm not a contracts expert, right? We're the connector, we're the organizer, right? But I know enough to be dangerous, but I don't want to speak on behalf of signing on or agreeing to something without having our contracting experts there in the room. So it is really ensuring that you have those right people in the right conversation. I'm not a person that likes to waste time or just invite people just for the sake of inviting them. I know sometimes you always hear about there's way too many people in this meeting. What value are they bringing? And it's, oh, they just need to be there to listen. And no, I enjoy having and listening in these conversations. I think I actually want to be in more conversations just so I understand, so I'm not blindsided by a lot of these things sometimes. But it is really making sure that you have those key stakeholders. And if there is a challenging vendor conversation, that you're not there by yourself, that, you have some support. Again, I've been in enough of these conversations where I can tell if it's going to go off the rails, where I'll just be like, turn to the right, and be like, all right, contracting partner, go at it, take over, you bring your expertise. And so again, that's also part of the trusting relationship that you have. That I think that the BIRM and the BRN need to kind of bring into the tables. Yeah.
Are you physically close with a lot of the people you work with, or are you quite spread out geographically?
I would say so. We're located in North Chicago area. So for the most part, we all are within the area. I'm fortunate, since COVID, a lot of us have been working remotely, but we still go into the office a couple times a week. So I would say, it's 50-50. A lot of times I'm on calls like this. Any other times I'm, in the office, and we're sharing in a table. There could be 10 or 20 of us in a room, sharing ideas, whiteboarding, talking about, what's new and upcoming that we need to kind of figure out a game plan for. But it's a little bit of a mix of both.
If you, on the last podcast with Gavin from Rolls-Royce, he was saying that the ability to meet people face to face is just, you can't put a price on that. It's you can talk to someone for years and kind of think you know them, but when you speak to someone face to face, you actually on the length of them, it really changes the dynamic of the relationship completely. So he's always keen, even if it means traveling, to meet people as much as he can, because it does really bolster the relationship. So do you spend a lot of time just kind of walking the floor when you're in the office, just trying to meet people?
Absolutely. It's interesting because when I first started the role was right around COVID, right? So I was very fortunate. So I think about back then, like, man, if I was new to an organization coming in as a BRM during COVID, that would be a challenge. That would really be a challenge. You'd really have to figure out how to connect with people and put yourself out there, and you have to. I think you have to have a little bit of a personality to do that. Again, me being fortunate and being at my organization for a long time, I did know a lot of these people. But that first year and a half was conversations over a Zoom or Teams call, right? But absolutely, we have a saying within our organization that the BIRMs bring cheer and information. So we put on our walking shoes and we walk around the building, and we have the kind of those water cooler talks with our business partners or just random people. You kind of get the 401 with everyone. I think that's part of the job, to be honest. Yeah. I really do, is getting those personal relationships down, and then that just opens up and invites people to tell you, oh my God, this is what's happening. Or I've even said in some of my articles that I post out there, man, if people are inviting you to the table and just randomly, that's actually, I love that. Bring me in, let me know what's going on. If they think that I can help, even if it's not technology related, like, Dan, we're putting together a business case. It's not really a technology thing, but we want your insights because you've done so many of these things. What do you think? That's where really the connection comes in, and the value of the role. But yeah, we always, in the afternoon, we always put we put our walking shoes on. We make the rounds to the organization, see who's around, talk to people, pick their brain a little bit, talk about, what people had for lunch, or some of the craziness that went on in a chat or an email or a conversation that we went on. I love my organization. There's nothing ever there's always craziness that always goes on. But you want to talk about some of those things.
Yeah.
Again, I just think it helps build that trust, those relationships, opens people up to inviting you in to talk about some of these things. I think it's great.
And you never know what you might uncover. When I spoke to Bruna from Brazil many episodes ago, she was saying that she's always curious, so she'll just talk to kind of random people in the business just to see, what you do and what you're up against, because you never know when you might be able to connect a dot, or find a missing piece of a puzzle somewhere. So it's just great to have these random conversations, because it's just part of being inquisitive about the business and just trying to, everyone's there has got a role to play. So it's great if you can kind of help improve them in some way.
Yeah, I've run into that on occasion, and it's like, oh, I didn't know that was going on. Like, and they're struggling with it. They're like, well, we just can't get past these couple things. I'm like, well, that's where I can help out. Like, let me in the room. They're like, well, you can do that. I'm like, of course I can do that. I'm like, kind of told you that like a while ago, right? And it's, until you actually kind of put yourself out there and kind of like, I don't want to say force yourself into the room, but yeah, let me in there. Like that's what we do best. I know who can get this done. I know the contracting people. I know the IT people. Sometimes it's a silly little thing that I don't know how to navigate the IT process. I don't know how to put in a request to ask for a new license of a software, of a new AI tool, right? The AI tools are all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's where I can help you. Like, that's my job is to know, what's the BRM Institute language, the domain, right? Know your domain.
Yeah.
I go, that's my thing. I'm like, let me help you navigate this. I'm like, and if like we can get it done today, like that's not a big thing, right? Some of these things take a little bit more time, but absolutely. Like I know the partners, the vendors. You're looking for something like that. Yeah, let me bring a vendor in. Let's talk about what you're looking for. I try to find the path of least resistance to kind of meeting the needs of the business. And again, not everything is technology. We live in the technology world, but for the most part, because the BRMs sit in the middle of all these things, we're exposed to different people, different vendors that may not necessarily be technology vendors. And so we can introduce people and bring all these things together to get the business where it needs to get done.
Yeah, it must be massively rewarding when you can do that. Solve a problem for someone that's they're really stuck on.
It is, and it's also, God, what did I get myself into, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like, well, this wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be, but now it's ballooned into this big thing, and again, because of the BRM's exposure to so many different things. I have so many different examples that I can keep you going for another hour or two of things that we've just been pulled into, that we've been asked to lead because of who we know and the exposure of different various projects and product implementations over the years. That we can lead a lot of these different things, and I think it's cool. I really appreciate the role. I think that it's a different mindset. It's more strategic, I think, than tactical. Although sometimes we've got to roll up our sleeves, and it's kind of always, you look at the materials that are out there on BRM, so don't get tactical, don't get into the day-to-day operations. But if doing a couple of those things here and there helps build trust with the business partners, and you're not stepping on anybody's toes, yeah, why not? I'm for it. I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, no, I think you have to. I think there are so many times where people want to get to the table, want to be more strategic, but there's just the operational issues. And if you don't roll up your sleeves, you're never going to get beyond that. So I think you have to be prepared to do that. And yeah, I think that's just step one. But yeah, I had to chuckle because the guy that's helping us build the business partner network, they said, I told them what I was trying to do, and they said, oh yeah, I could help you do that. That's no problem. But now that I've got them kind of trapped, I'm just saying, what about this and what about this, and help us with this, and it's kind of,
Be careful. Be careful as you open up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Wish he just kept his mouth shut. Poor guy. There we go.
I think that's okay though. I'd rather do a little bit more. One, I think it's good for me personally. I should say professionally.
Yeah.
But I think it's good for business partner. I think it's good for everyone just to overextend yourself, put yourself out there, try, and you're going to learn something along the way as well, right? Trying something new, getting comfortable with being a little uncomfortable in some of these different situations. I've seen so many different things. It's a quick example. Our organization is going through a digital transformation with new ERP, and I know that those are always a lot of organizations and companies do that, and they're not easy, right? They're big, they're monolithic, and you're taking out old stuff and putting in new stuff. And we're like, we kind of got to a point where like, well, we're gonna need to update our credit card processors, and they're like, well, Dan, can you organize that conversation? Can you bring in? I'm like, I don't know anything about credit card processing, right? And I got way more knowledge than I ever wanted to know. I'm not an expert. I don't want to be an expert in it. There are so many there's so many nuances to online credit card processing and all those little fees that are here and there, and different partners, vendors that are along the way of that journey. But I got exposed to that, and now I have some knowledge that I can, when somebody approaches me like, Dan, we want to turn on a new system and it has some e-commerce capability. Can we, what does that look like? What does it mean to turn that on? And I can like, well, here's what I know. I know probably this much, but I didn't even know there's this much.
Good start, yeah.
It's at least, it's more knowledge in my bank that I can bring to the table, versus, punting it off to maybe a consultant, whoever it is, where we're going to spend more time and money on it. So it's just the things that you get exposed to in the role is really, whether you ask for it or not, you're gonna get it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Right? And look, I've seen that we're kind of already at the end of the hour, so it's time for my last question. If you could share one piece of advice, anything you've learned along the way, anything you think could be really helpful to people that are either in the role already or new to the role, what's the one thing you think has helped you most in your current role?
I think, it's being curious. I think that's a huge part of the role. Just asking those questions. Why are we doing this? Pushing the business a little bit. They're asking for something. Okay, let's talk about the value of that. I think that's critical. And I also think that just the building up your emotional intelligence skill is critical to really understanding your business partners, building that trust. I think that that's something that has been crucial from day one for me. Coming in as a new BRM into any organization, I think that is just critical. Really being able to read the room, understand what people are going through, understanding their pain points, their struggles, some of their successes. That I think is critical. And that takes time. That really does take time. That's not, fortunately or unfortunately, it's not a skill I think you can just like pick up a book and just learn it. I think that takes a while to get groomed. And if you have strong leadership that can kind of guide you on that path, that is really, really helpful. I've been fortunate where I've had some strong leadership kind of help me identify what to look out for when you're going into a room, or when you kind of reading between the lines of emails or chats or whatever it is. That's been really, really helpful. That just kind of gets you understanding the mindset of your business partner. That's been critical, absolutely critical.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much, Dan. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. And as always, these things are so enlightening for me, and I hope they are for our audience. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I look forward to staying in touch and then seeing where you go from here. So thanks so much, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.